I'm really glad that he's here with us today to really share his experience and how he has built his personal brand whilst working for a big corporate like IBM. Hi, Andrew. Thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Francine. Great to be here and good to talk about one of my most favorite topics of all time, personal branding.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of people need to understand the importance of personal branding because there's so much misconception going on about what personal branding is. Tell us briefly what you're currently doing, Andrew.
Yeah, so after I left IBM, I've always been a public speaker. I've been speaking for about 20 years, probably the last 10 years professionally. And I found there was a real need for corporates to understand how to better prepare themselves for disruption, looking at cultural change, personal branding, all those sort of things. So what I do now is I go into C-suites. It can either be a round table. I was at a board of a large insurance company last week, or it can be a group of 100 executives at an away day. They really want someone to come in and give them practical advice about what they should do to embrace this new digital future. And so I call myself the practical futurist because rather than futurists that look 20 or 30 years out, I look at 20 or 30 days and leave them with things they can do next week to make sure they're ready for disruption and the digital future that's ahead of us.
That's fabulous. So tell me then now, how did you manage to build your personal brand whilst, working for that corporate? And I remember that 3 years ago when we met, actually, I asked you this question. But, tell us briefly how you manage actually to build your own personal brand while working for a big corporate.
Well, it's a really good question. I've been speaking to some people in similar professional services firms recently about this creative tension between your own brand and the company brand. Let me tell you that when I joined IBM, they hired me partly because of my personal brand. I was consulting. When I would go in front of a major IBM client, I'd be a bit cheeky because I'm Australian and I'm an extrovert. And I'd say, look, before we start the meeting, can you tell me the first thing that you did when you saw my name on the meeting invite? They said, well, we put your name into Google or LinkedIn. And so I learnt the power of your own personal brand, not to just promote yourself selfishly, but if I'm going to be put forward and my team's going to be put forward on a multi-million-dollar deal with an IBM client, they need to know who they're going to get. And so if you do actually Google Andrew Grill, there are actually 16 Andrew Grills in the world. So it's not a completely unique name. But I like to think that I actually own the front page of Google because if you type my name in, what comes up? My LinkedIn page, my blog page, my speaking page, all those sort of things. And so I know that that's what comes up when a client or a prospective client puts my name into Google or LinkedIn. And what I want them to see is my body of work, that if they were to hire me or engage me, that I'm going to be the right person for the job. So it's not about, it's a really fine line about, being a jerk and saying, hey, I'm amazing, look at me, look at my brand, and realizing the power. Now, I actually put a value on my personal brand. When I negotiated my salary to join IBM, amazingly, they asked me what I should be paid. And I had a figure in mind. And I added to that figure an amount that I thought my personal brand was worth. And they said yes. Now, I would probably value my personal brand a bit higher these days than what it was. And I won't tell you what it was, but it was a significant percentage of my annual salary that actually I think was part of the personal brand. The other thing is that when I got into IBM, people could see that I didn't just stop being me. I kept blogging, I kept doing my public speaking, I kept being invited onto podcasts and video casts like this one. And what was amazing was the long-term IBMers, those had been there for 30 years or so, said, teach me how to do this. We're seeing that you're winning work and you're getting onto RFPs that we would never get onto before because people know who you are. I managed to create about $100 million of incremental value for IBM while I was there, using my personal brand as a way to allow clients to understand why they should choose us over a competitor. So I can honestly say personal branding is useful in a corporate environment. There are corporates like IBM that actually value people to have their own personal brand. And I think if I was to work for a company where they said, look, you've got to stop blogging, you've got to stop tweeting, you've got to stop public speaking, we just want you to work for the firm, they're missing out. But it does take a certain type of person. You can't go and say, look, everyone has to have a personal brand. You all have to be on social media and speaking. I think we might talk about this in a moment, the notion of eminence. If you are really well known in your field outside your organization, the organization should embrace that and see how they can leverage that while you're there. Because I think the time you're at an organization, you are actually renting your brand to them. And I look at my time at IBM, I was there about 4 years. I rented my brand to them. And when I left, I took my brand with me. When I was approaching them, I said, look, I would like you to have the use of my network, my brand while I'm here.
I love that shift of paradigm. Actually, it's not actually I'm going there to leverage the name of IBM, but also it's co-creating, and I talked about that I think last week. We're
Yeah.
talking about co-creating brands with personal brand and business or corporate brands actually. But Andrew, you were able to do that because you had your own personal brand, and you were partly you're also hired to do this.
Yeah.
But what if somebody is at the moment in a corporate who hasn't started yet? How can they start doing that while they are still in corporate at the moment?
Well, you don't have to spend 10 or 20 years doing it. Look what other people have done. Look at what you're doing. Look what I'm doing, and take the cues. And so look at LinkedIn, for example. Most people have a fairly bland LinkedIn page. They have all of their job titles there. If you look at my LinkedIn page, I'm not saying it's any better, but I use all the tips and tricks that LinkedIn allows me. So my 1,300 character opening paragraph basically sells to you what I do. I have videos there. I have, where I didn't have a video, I have a press clipping. I put graphics, and I annotate my every single role I've had with something I'm really proud of. And so if you scroll through my LinkedIn profile, you can actually, without leaving LinkedIn, look at what you're going to get when I speak, look at the sort of things I've been involved in earlier on in my career, and I use everything that LinkedIn allows me to basically promote that. Because when it comes to hiring someone, when it comes to selecting someone for a project, there are many, many competitive forces, and there are other people that they can hire. What makes you stand out and rise above the noise? And when I talk to school children, I'm involved in a program called Speakers for Schools. We go around and we...
With that fabulous woman.
Robert Preston, Robert Preston.
Yeah.
We go around to schools, and it's generally sixth formers, where I give a similar talk. And after every talk, I either have one or two students come up to me to say just what you've asked. How do I start? How do I do this? And I say, look what I've done, and copy some of that. You must have a picture of you speaking somewhere. And you think about it, if you've got two profiles in front of you, one where people have been listening to their thought leadership and understanding what they can do, and one person that just says, I worked at company X, which one are you going to hire? Which one stands out? And you say, I really want to give them an opportunity. I want to see what they've got behind them. So start building a body of work. Well, way before I became a professional public speaker, I started to film my talks. I got my iPhone. I bought a 15-pound tripod from Amazon. I put it at the back of the room. Now, initially, it wasn't good enough for broadcast, but I could watch it back, and I could see how I spoke and how I could improve.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've upgraded my equipment, and now sometimes I live stream, sometimes I film in 4K, and I actually put those videos on my website, put them on LinkedIn. That is showing people, it's what I call social proof. So I gave a speech in Italy to DHL. Standing behind me is a huge DHL logo. That telegraphs to the world that DHL had enough confidence in me as a speaker and as a consultant to be hired to speak to their 140 senior executives. And someone sees that and goes, well, if DHL have hired him, maybe we could hire him. And I've got a range of amazing clients that keep wanting to hire me because of this social proof, because people can see what I stand for. Like I said earlier on, there's a fine line between being a jerk and saying, aren't I amazing, versus having a body of work and other people going, what you've done is really interesting. I'm very flattered you've asked me to come on and talk about personal branding. That means that you think that some of the things I've said are useful. And so it takes time, but to your question, what do? You start. You do an audit of what have you got of your performances or your body of work at the moment. Do you have press clippings? Do you have photographs? Do you have white papers? Start putting them where people can notice them, and that will build and grow. And every opportunity you get to present somewhere where there's an audience, get someone to take a picture so people can see, wow, someone has asked that person to go on stage for an hour or 50 minutes to talk to them. They must have something worth saying. And so the brand that gets out there, you get known for having a level of expertise in a certain area.
Yeah. I think that is very important to really share your story, so then people can see that actually they can still manage to build their own personal brand, even if they're working on corporate. Of course, if they are their own business owners, that's even more easy to do. But sometimes people just say, well, personal branding, I think that the misconception or the myth out there is that people think that personal branding is like self-promotion. But actually, in a way, it's really showcasing who you are and what you're doing and why people should trust you, right? Because if you don't do that, who else is going to talk about you? And what you're going to find on Google is what other people are saying about you, and you are not in control of your own brand. So can you give us some parting advice how people can start right now? You gave us already some great tools, but do you have any other thoughts how people can still manage their own personal brand, even if they haven't started yet, and build up to grow their career or their business?
So a couple of things to start helping your brand. Unless you have a completely generic name like John Smith or Janet Smith, go and buy your domain name. I bought andrewgrill.com in 1999. And so Google does its work. So when Google sees the words Andrew Grill and the domain name, it then puts me up above the other people. Go to moo.com, MOO.com, as in the cow, and buy some business cards. Put your name on there, put your website, put your email address that links back to your website. Rather than being agrill@gmail.com, why not being agrill@andrewgrill.com? That means that then you're putting your brand in everything that you do. What I also do with Moo cards, on the back of every card, you can have a different photograph. So I take the best photographs of me presenting, and it's a bit like bingo. I give people a shot of me presenting on the back of the card. What that does is it then shows that people can go and look at your body of work. So the domain name, the business card, look at your LinkedIn profile and see what you do, what I do, and see what you've got to enhance that. Little simple things like the LinkedIn URL. Many people don't know that they can have linkedin.com/in/your name, which is what I've got, rather than 7950BC. Little things like that tell people that you actually want to promote your name as a brand. But think of it not as a promotion of you. If you're an employee in an organization, how can you help your organization use you and rent your brand for best effect?
Yeah, I love this rent your brand thing. That's great. So, Andrew, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
On Twitter, I'm @AndrewGrill, and you can see on the screen there, futurist.london will get me anywhere in the world.
That's great. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing your experience with our viewers. So it was really a pleasure to have you again this morning, and we'll catch up again sometime soon.
It's great, Francine. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.